They say there's a house in northern Japan where even God can't hear you scream. A place where sound itself dies, swallowed by something older than the mountains. No one remembers who built it. No one knows when the silence began. But those who've been there agree on one thing. Once you enter, the world forgets you ever made a sound. And sometimes, if you listen closely enough to the quiet, you can still hear it breathing. Chapter 1: The Village That Forgot Sound. The road to Tsukikage Village twisted through damp, shadowed mountains where the sun could barely cut through the fog. The air was thick and pale, and even birds avoided the sky above it. From a distance, Tsukikage looked like any other forgotten village in northern Japan: old tiled roofs, narrow rice terraces, dark cedar forests. But the moment one crossed its boundary, something unnatural became clear. There was no sound. No wind brushing through trees. No running water from the stream. No crows. No dogs. Only a silence so deep it seemed to press against the skin. Villagers once said the silence began more than 40 years ago, after a night of heavy rain. When dawn came, the whole village awoke in stillness. The temple bell refused to ring. Doors slammed soundlessly. An old woman screamed for help, but no one heard her. That was the day Tsukikage was named, the village that forgot sound. Elders still whispered about what started it, the Kuroda family, who lived in a wooden house at the edge of the forest. They were the first to hear the silence. On the night before it spread, neighbors recalled hearing one long, terrible scream, then absolute quiet. By morning, the Kuroda family had vanished. Only bloody handprints remained on the walls, and a wooden doll with its mouth carved away sat in the center of the room. After that, the air around the house grew strange. Even when people shouted, no echo came. The silence seemed to swallow everything whole. Those who stayed in Tsukikage soon went mad. They scribbled warnings on their walls. Greater than, "Don't listen. The sound is watching us." Government investigators came once. Their microphones, radios, even their heartbeat monitors stopped working as soon as they neared the Kuroda house. The final report read, "Greater than area exhibits complete acoustic nullification. Not environmental or mechanical. Possible spiritual phenomenon." The village was erased from maps. No one spoke of it again. Until journalist Matsuda Hiroshi found the old police file about the missing Kuroda family. In his investigation notes, the first line was written in bold, trembling pen. "Greater than, if there is a place where even fear itself refuses to make a sound. It must be here." That night, under a gray and silent sky, Matsuda stepped into the village that had forgotten its own voice. Chapter 2: The Abandoned Family. The Kuroda family moved to Tsukikage in the winter of 1978. The father, Takashi Kuroda, was a skilled carpenter hired to rebuild a small mountain shrine destroyed by an earthquake. He came with his wife Aiko and their 6-year-old daughter, Hana. At first, their life was peaceful. The villagers liked Takashi for his craftsmanship and gentle manner. Little Hana would run through the yard every morning, singing cheerful nursery songs that echoed across the valley. Her voice was so pure that people said it made the mist shimmer. Then one day, her singing stopped. It began with whispers inside the Kuroda house. One cold night, Aiko rushed to her neighbor's door, pale and trembling. "Greater than, he keeps saying there's someone whispering inside the walls." She gasped. "But I can't hear anything." From that night on, Takashi changed. He stopped sleeping, pressed his ear to the wooden walls, listening for a voice only he could hear. He said it was a woman, soft, desperate, calling out from inside the wood. "Greater than, she's asking for her child," he told Aiko. "She's trapped, can't you hear her?" 3 nights later, Takashi smashed through the walls with his chisel and hammer. When neighbors burst in, they found him standing amid the wreckage, hands bleeding, lips moving, but no sound came out. That was the night the silence began. Inside the house, every sound vanished. No matter how loudly they shouted, nothing answered back. It was as if the air itself had turned solid. Days later, Hana lost her voice. She opened her mouth to cry, but only air came out. Aiko ran to the nearby temple for help, but the old monk shook his head. Greater than, don't go back, he said softly, that house has been awakened. The next morning, the Kuroda family was gone. The door was locked from the inside. When villagers broke in, they found the dining table set with untouched rice bowls, the food cold and gray. In the center of the room sat a wooden doll, carved delicately, but with its mouth sanded smooth. On its chest, someone had cut 2 kanji characters with a knife, seijaku, silence. Police were called. They found no footprints, no signs of struggle, only dozens of bloody handprints overlapping each other on the floor, all pressed toward the walls. That night, a fierce wind swept through Tsukikage, shaking every roof and tree. Yet the villagers realized in horror, they could not hear the wind at all. From that moment, sound disappeared from the valley, and the doll of little Hannah remained where it was, sitting by the window, its painted black eyes forever open, waiting for someone new to walk through the door, someone whose voice it could borrow. Chapter 3: The Reporter's Curiosity. Hiroshi Matsuda was a freelance journalist for Supernatural Nippon, a magazine devoted to paranormal mysteries and forgotten legends. He had slept in haunted inns, interviewed survivors from Aokigahara Forest, even spent a night in a house rumored to be cursed by a headless ghost. But nothing had ever made his heartbeat fall silent the way Tsukikage did. One evening, while searching through police archives in Morioka, Matsuda found an old file. Case number 442, The Disappearance of the Kuroda Family, 1978. Most pages were faded or half burned. At the bottom of the last page was a handwritten note. Greater than, no sound, no echoes, even our voices stopped, do not return. To Matsuda, that note wasn't a warning, it was an invitation. He began digging deeper, interviewing nearby villagers, temple caretakers, and local historians. Each time he mentioned Tsukikage, their expressions hardened. Some shook their heads, others whispered a single line before walking away. Greater than, there's no sound there, only something that listens. That night, Matsuda sat in a cheap inn under a weak yellow lamp, recording his first thoughts for the article. Greater than, October 3rd. I'll reach Tsukikage tomorrow. They say there's no sound in that place. Scientifically, that's impossible. But there was something in the villagers' eyes, as if silence itself had weight. If there truly exists a place where sound dies, maybe it's because something killed it. His voice played clearly on the recorder. But at the end of the file, beneath his own breathing, another breath could be heard, faint, uneven, as though someone were standing right behind him. The next morning, it rained. Matsuda drove alone through the mist, the road winding higher into the mountains. The radio lost signal, replaced by static, then silence. When he finally stopped by an old wooden sign reading, Yu Ying Kun Tsukikage Village, even the rain seemed to fall without noise. He stepped out of the car. No sound of the door closing. No crunch of gravel underfoot. Only stillness. He tried speaking. Hello? His lips moved, but nothing reached his ears. Cold air brushed the back of his neck. He lifted his recorder, spoke louder, then replayed it. At first, only static, then a faint giggle, a child's laugh. Distorted. Matsuda spun around. No one. Far down the dirt path, he saw a small figure standing among the fallen leaves, a girl in a white kimono. Motionless, her head tilted slightly to one side. When he blinked, she was gone. Lying where she had stood was a small wooden doll, face smooth and mouthless, half submerged in a puddle. He picked it up. Rainwater streamed down its painted black eyes, leaving streaks that looked like tears. Carved into its back were 5 words in Japanese, barely legible through the grime. Greater than, Kanojo wa mada kiiteru. She is still listening. Matsuda felt the air tighten around him, the kind of silence that breathes. And somewhere, beneath the hush of the mountains, something began to listen back. Chapter 4: The Whispering Air. Matsuda arrived in Tsukikage just as twilight began to fade. The village lay under a sky the color of ash, and the mist hung so thick that every house looked like a shadow of itself. He found an abandoned cabin near a dried stream and decided to stay the night. Inside, the air was damp and stale. Cobwebs stretched from the ceiling to the floor. A small wooden table, a few moldy tatami mats, and an old photograph, a family of 3, smiling faintly. The man and woman in the picture looked ordinary, but the child between them, short hair, round eyes, made Matsuda freeze. She looked exactly like the girl he'd seen on the road. He set up his camera and notebook, then began to write. The only light came from his flashlight, its beam flickering weakly against the walls. Even the scratch of his pen on paper made no sound. He turned on his pocket radio. The dial spun wildly before freezing at frequency 0.0. No static, no hum, only the same suffocating silence. Then, a strange feeling crept over him, a pressure in the air. Like something exhaling near his ear. The curtain moved, dust drifted down, yet there was no wind. He stepped closer to the window. The cold brushed against his neck, and in that stillness, he felt, not heard, a whisper glide through his mind. Greater than, can you hear me? He froze. The voice wasn't in his ears, it was inside him. He grabbed the recorder. If someone's here, say it again. He hit play. At first, nothing. Then, a sharp scraping sound, like fingernails dragging across wood, followed by a high, broken laugh of a child. He spun around. The room was empty. The back door was open, swaying gently, though no wind stirred. Beyond it lay a small yard blanketed in dead leaves. Matsuda aimed his flashlight. There, at the base of a massive cedar, hung a string of ofuda. Ancient paper talismans, now torn and yellowed. As he stepped closer, he noticed the trunk was carved with dozens of handprints, all child-sized, all facing outward. A faint groan rippled through the ground. The tree's hollow breathed out a chill so cold it extinguished his light. Darkness swallowed him. And in the dark, a whisper again, this time clearer, sharper. Greater than, give us back our voices. The words pressed against his skull. He staggered backward, his throat aching as if something were trying to crawl out of it. He tried to scream, but no sound came. When the light flickered back, the talismans were gone. Only a single muddy handprint remained on the trunk, pointing directly at him. Matsuda fled to the cabin, slammed the door, and collapsed against the wall. His recorder was still running. He lifted it with shaking hands and replayed the latest file. At first, silence. Then a child's voice whispered softly, right beside his ear. Greater than, you can hear me now, can't you? He turned toward the window. Outside, through the curtain of fog, stood the same small girl in white. Her hair clung wet to her face. Her head tilted. Slowly, she lifted a finger to her lips. Shush. Chapter 5 The Old Monk's Warning. By morning, the mist over Tsukikage had thickened into a heavy shroud. The sun was pale and distant, a white disk behind gray clouds. Matsuda hadn't slept. He sat against the cabin wall, the recorder still in his hand, listening again to that soft, childlike whisper. Greater than, you can hear me now. He needed answers. Before dawn, he remembered the note in the police file, a reference to an old temple at the base of the mountain. If anyone in this silent valley still lived, it would be the monk who once tended that shrine. The temple stood in ruins. Its gate was crooked, the bell tower half collapsed. Matsuda walked up the moss-covered steps, every motion silent. Even the crunch of stone beneath his shoes made no sound. Inside, he found a man sitting before a cracked altar, skin pale. Robes faded, eyes clouded but alert. The old monk turned slowly, as if he had expected this visitor. Without words, he motioned for Matsuda to sit. Then he began to write on a sheet of thin paper with a trembling brush. The characters bled across the page. Greater than, you came for the voices. Matsuda nodded. Yes, the Kuroda family, what happened to them? The monk's hand froze. He closed his eyes for a long moment, then wrote again. Greater than, they woke the thing beneath this land. It feeds on sound, it feeds on confession. He turned the brush over, dipped it again, and continued. Greater than 40 years ago, the villagers performed a ritual to seal a curse. But they used the voice of a child, the youngest sacrifice. That child's soul never left. It waits for someone to listen. Matsuda's throat went dry. You mean, Hana? The monk didn't answer, only looked up, his cloudy eyes glistening. He raised a shaking finger and pointed toward the far corner of the temple, where a small altar stood draped in black cloth. Matsuda hesitated, then lifted the cloth. Beneath it was a wooden mask, carved in the shape of a child's face, but without a mouth. Its surface was smooth, glossy, and cold. The monk scribbled frantically now. Greater than, do not uncover her face. The moment she is heard, she learns to speak again. Matsuda looked back at him, uneasy. What do you mean, her? The monk's lips trembled. His voice cracked for the first time in decades, a whisper. Hoarse and terrified. Greater than, the silence, is her breathing. Then he froze mid-motion, brush falling from his fingers. Blood trickled from his nose. His eyes rolled back, and before Matsuda could react, the monk collapsed. The recorder in Matsuda's pocket clicked on by itself. A faint, hollow voice, neither male nor female, filled the air. Greater than, he spoke when he shouldn't have. The mask on the altar began to tremble, a crack forming across its surface. Matsuda stumbled back, grabbing the recorder. He ran out of the temple, down the mossy steps, heart pounding. But all around him, the fog seemed thicker, heavier, alive. He turned once to look back. The temple bell, rusted and still, suddenly swayed once. And though no sound should have been possible, Matsuda heard it, faint, distorted, like a dying breath. Chapter 6: The Broken Tape. By the time Matsuda returned to the Kuroda house, the sky over Tsukikage had turned the color of ashes. The mist was so dense it seemed to absorb the light from his flashlight, wrapping the house in a gray cocoon. He stepped through the warped front door. The smell of rot and dust filled his lungs. Every plank groaned beneath his weight, yet no sound followed. Even his heartbeat felt distant, muffled, as if swallowed by the air. On the table lay an old photograph coated in dust. He wiped it clean with his sleeve. It showed a family of 3, Takashi, Aiko, and little Hana, all smiling. But something was wrong. Their mouths were blurred, as if erased from the print. He turned the photo toward the light. For an instant, reflected in the glass, he saw a fourth figure standing behind him. A small girl with empty black eyes and no mouth. He spun around. Nothing. Forcing himself to focus, Matsuda moved deeper into the house. At the end of a narrow corridor he found a small locked room. After several minutes of struggling with the rusted latch, it finally gave way. Inside was Takashi Kuroda's workshop. Wood shavings covered the floor, and tools lay scattered across the desk. In the center sat a reel-to-reel tape recorder. Half melted, the tape inside charred and fused to the spool. Next to it, a sheet of paper bore a single handwritten line. Greater than, even if we can't hear her, she's still singing. Matsuda hesitated, then pressed the power switch. The recorder clicked, the reels jerked, and the red light flickered weakly to life. He slipped on the old headphones. At first, static. Then, through the hiss, a child's voice began to hum a slow lullaby. Soft, fragile, beautiful. The melody stuttered, warped, and faded. A moment later came the creak of wood, the sound of footsteps pacing across the floorboards. Then a man's voice, trembling, desperate. Greater than, Hana? Where are you? Answer me, please. A crash, then silence. Matsuda rewound the tape, heart racing. But the second playback was different. The child's voice now laughed, high, distorted, wrong. Greater than, Daddy? Why can't you hear me anymore? A sharp crack exploded in his ears. The machine seized up, smoke rising from its vents. The smell of burnt plastic filled the air. He yanked off the headphones, coughing. Yet even after the recorder stopped, the singing continued. It came from somewhere inside the room, soft, rhythmic, closer. He swung the flashlight toward the shelves. There, sitting among the dust-covered carvings, was a small wooden doll, Its head was tilted. Its face smooth, except for a narrow slit now forming where a mouth should be. From that slit came a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Greater than, you can hear me now, can't you?" Matsuda dropped the light. The beam rolled across the floor, flashing over the walls. Walls now covered in dozens of tiny black handprints, all pointing toward him. He stumbled to the door. It slammed shut on its own. In the darkness, he felt breath brush against his ear, shallow, slow, human. Then a voice, calm and near. "Greater than, now it's your turn to sing for me." Chapter 7: The Shadow Behind the Mirror. Night fell quickly over Tsukikage. The mist thickened, swallowing the moonlight until the entire valley looked drowned in gray water. Matsuda sat in the middle of the ruined living room, the broken tape recorder beside him, the air cold enough to turn his breath to smoke. He could still hear faint traces of Hana's voice looping endlessly inside his head. "Now it's your turn." He tried to calm himself, scanning the room with his flashlight. The beam landed on a tall shape draped in black cloth, a mirror. Almost as tall as a man, standing against the far wall. Dust coated the cloth, but on its surface were two clear handprints, as though someone had just pressed against it from underneath. Matsuda stepped closer. Something about the air near the mirror felt colder, heavier, like the weight of deep water. He reached out and brushed away the dust. A faint inscription was scrawled along the edge of the cloth, written in faded ink. "Greater than, if you see her, it's already too late." He hesitated, then pulled the cloth down. The air instantly dropped in temperature. The mirror was framed in dark wood, carved with lotus flowers and unfamiliar symbols. For a moment, it reflected only him, his tired face, trembling hands, the quivering beam of his flashlight. Then something moved behind him. He spun around, nothing. When he turned back, his reflection no longer followed. The version of him in the mirror stood perfectly still, staring straight ahead, lips moving silently. Matsuda leaned closer. The reflection's mouth formed words he could not hear. He whispered hoarsely, "What are you saying?" The reflection smiled faintly, and a second face appeared behind it. A woman. Her hair hung long and wet, her skin pale as paper. She wore a faded kimono, her expression both sorrowful and hollow. Matsuda's heart stopped. He recognized her from the photo, Kuroda. She reached toward him from inside the glass. Her fingertips brushed the inner surface, leaving trails of frost. Then her lips began to move, slow and deliberate, shaping three words Matsuda could read even without sound. "Greater than, give it back." The mirror began to quiver, its surface rippling like disturbed water. Cracks ran through the glass with a soundless shiver. In those fragments, Matsuda glimpsed flashes, a small girl crouching in a dark corner, clutching a doll, Takashi carving wood with shaking hands, blood seeping from a woman's stitched mouth. Aiko's reflection opened her eyes wide, black, bottomless pits, and pressed her face against the glass. The mirror trembled violently. Her voice erupted inside Matsuda's mind, cold and echoing. "Greater than, give her voice back." The mirror shattered. Thousands of shards exploded into the air, but instead of falling, they hung suspended, vibrating like silver leaves. From each one came faint cries, whispers, sobs, a storm of trapped voices. Matsuda fell to his knees, clutching his head. The whispers grew louder, forming a single phrase repeated over and over. "Greater than, she's listening, she's listening, she's listening." Then, silence. When he opened his eyes, the shards were gone. Only the black cloth remained, lying motionless on the floor. And standing where the mirror had been was a woman's shadow, detached from any body. It lifted its head slowly, hollow eyes fixed on him. The voice returned, right inside his skull. "Greater than, a Tokodama has heard you." The lights went out. Chapter 8: The Visitor at Night. That night, the sky over Tsukikage was a sea of black ink. No moon, no stars, only fog, thick and unmoving, sealing the world in quiet. Matsuda locked every door of the Kuroda house and stuffed rags into the cracks. He sat in the middle of the room, flashlight flickering, Recorder blinking weakly beside him. Since the mirror shattered, he hadn't heard a single real sound, not even his own breathing. It was as if the world had exhaled once and forgotten how to breathe again. He turned on the recorder, speaking softly even though he knew no one could hear. Greater than, day 3. Something is here with me. It doesn't walk, it doesn't speak. It just listens. I think the silence itself is alive. He switched the recorder off. The air was heavy, thick enough to choke. The candlelight on the table flickered once, twice, then died. He froze. From somewhere deep in the hallway came a faint glow, the trembling light of a candle. It moved slowly toward him. Matsuda strained his eyes. The figure holding the candle was small, a girl. Her white kimono shimmered faintly in the dark. Her hair hung down over her face. She walked soundlessly, her steps gliding over the floor. Hannah. He tried to call her name, but his throat produced no sound. His lips moved, but even his breathing was stolen. The girl stopped at the doorway. The candle's flame fluttered once and went out. Darkness fell again. The door creaked open, not with noise, but with movement. Something crawled out of the room beyond, dragging itself across the wooden floor. Its limbs bent the wrong way. Its head tilted, and when the beam of his flashlight caught it, Matsuda saw. It wasn't Hannah. It was the doll. But larger, human-sized. Its face was smooth and pale, but 2 black eyes had been carved into it, wet and shining. And where the mouth should have been, a narrow slit was slowly tearing open, stretching wider and wider. It crept toward him. Each movement made the floor tremble, yet the silence remained absolute. He wanted to scream. His chest ached with the pressure of a sound that could not escape. Then, from above, something shifted. Matsuda looked up and froze. A woman hung upside down from the ceiling beams. Her skin was gray, her neck twisted, her lips were sewn shut with black thread. Her eyes opened. She stared straight into him. The threads snapped one by one. Taut, breaking, bleeding, but without a single sound. When the last stitch tore free, her mouth opened wide, a pit of darkness. A rush of freezing air swept through the room, and for the first time in days, Matsuda heard again. Not silence, but a flood of sound. Howling wind, crashing wood, screams overlapping, dozens of voices crying, whispering, laughing, pleading. He clutched his ears and fell to his knees. But even through the chaos, he couldn't hear his own scream. Then, just as suddenly, everything went still. The air settled, the candlelight returned. Matsuda sat trembling, covered in cold sweat. On his chest, imprinted in dark ash, was a small handprint, child-sized. He reached up to touch his throat. When he tried to speak, nothing came out. Hannah's voice, soft, sweet, and distant, filled his mind. Greater than, now you're one of us. Chapter 9 The Journal of the Missing Daughter. Morning came gray and soundless. Matsuda woke on the floor, his throat raw, the taste of blood on his tongue. He tried to call out, nothing. Even his gasps came without breath. The recorder beside him still blinked red, running on its own. When he pressed play, his own voice echoed back, faint and trembling. Greater than, if anyone hears this, it's already too late. Then another voice, the soft, melodic tone of a little girl. Greater than, don't be afraid. I'll show you where it started. A door creaked open somewhere behind him. He turned. The closet door, one he was certain had been shut the night before, now stood ajar. Inside lay a small box wrapped in faded cloth. He lifted the lid and found a child's notebook, its edges brittle and yellowed with age. Tied with a red ribbon, the cover read in childish handwriting. Greater than, Hannah's diary. Matsuda's hands trembled as he opened it. The first few pages were filled with drawings, flowers, cats, and smiling suns. But halfway through, the handwriting changed. The letters became uneven, shaky. February 14th. Daddy says there's a woman talking inside the walls. Mommy tells him to stop listening. But now I hear her too. She says, Hannah, don't let them take your voice. February 16th. Daddy closed all the doors. He says, "The sound is dying." Mommy cried, but I couldn't hear her anymore. I tried to sing, but my mouth didn't work. Why can't I hear my song? February 18th. The woman told me to write. She said, "If you can't speak, then write so we can hear you." So I write and write and write. When the ink ran out, I used my blood. It's warm. It listens better than the pen. February 20th. I saw the girl in the mirror. She looks like me, but her mouth is gone. She smiled anyway. She said, "We'll be quiet together." The last page was smeared with blood. The handwriting broke into uneven lines. Words scattered and half erased. Greater than, Mommy says silence keeps us safe. Daddy says sound brings the curse. But I still hear them calling in my head. Someone is breathing in the dark. Someone is using my voice. Matsuda closed the book slowly. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped it. Then, a sound. A soft laugh. A child's laugh. He looked down. The notebook had flipped open again on its own. The last blank page was filling with new writing, as though an invisible hand were pressing into the paper from below. The letters formed one by one. Greater than, "Thank you for reading, Matsuda-san." He stumbled backward, heart hammering. The recorder switched on again. He heard his own voice speaking, but the words weren't his. They were Hannah's. Greater than, "Now you'll tell the story for me, won't you?" He dropped the recorder, backing toward the door. The world outside had gone still, no wind, no birds, no movement. The silence of Tsukikage had become absolute. As he stepped into it, Hannah's lullaby began to play in his mind. Slow, sweet, and endless. Greater than, la 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 la, stay quiet. Don't speak anymore. Chapter 10. The Man Without a Voice. Matsuda left the Kuroda house before dawn. The world around him wrapped in a colorless fog. No wind stirred the trees. Even the crunch of gravel under his feet existed only in feeling, not in sound. Somewhere deep in the valley, he found a single wooden shack standing apart from the ruins. Smoke curled from its chimney, silent, gray, almost unreal. He approached carefully. An old man sat inside, thin and bent, his hair white as snow. When Matsuda entered, the man looked up and froze. His mouth was sewn shut. Black threads crossed his lips from corner to corner, each stitch raw and inflamed, as if done recently. Yet his eyes were alive, alert, and filled with recognition. Matsuda lifted his notebook, wrote, "Greater than, are you Saito Genjiro?" The man nodded slowly. He reached for a small slate board beside him, chalk trembling in his hand. He began to write, the lines uneven but clear. Greater than, I went into that house 10 years ago. I heard them, the ones without mouths. They asked me to speak their names. His hand paused, the chalk scratched harder. Greater than, when I spoke, they took my voice. Matsuda swallowed hard. The man's body shook with silent sobs, blood seeping from between the black stitches. He kept writing. Greater than, they can't touch you if you stay quiet. But silence is heavy. It grows inside you. After a while, I began to hear my own voice, somewhere else. Matsuda leaned closer. What do you mean, somewhere else? He whispered, forgetting that no sound would come. The man's eyes darted toward the window. His hand moved faster, desperate. Greater than, the house isn't dead. It listens. It waits for someone to speak its name. Don't say the word, don't call it. A tremor passed through the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. The man dropped the chalk and clutched his throat, convulsing. The black threads strained, snapping one by one. Matsuda tried to help him, but the old man shoved him away, eyes wide with terror. His chest heaved, but not a single sound came out. Then, with a violent motion, he ripped the remaining stitches apart. Blood spilled over his chin. He opened his mouth wide, and finally, something escaped. Not a scream. Not a word. But a noise like air escaping from a broken flute, harsh. hollow, and endless. Matsuda stumbled back as the shack's temperature plummeted. The sound, if it could be called that, began to twist, shifting into something like a voice. Greater than, Ato, Ko, Da, Ma. Matsuda's eyes widened. The cursed name. The man's body went limp. His head fell forward, blood dripping silently onto the floor. Matsuda turned toward the window and froze. A small face stared in at him from the mist. A little girl's face. Hana. Her expression was calm, almost tender. Around her neck hung black thread, the same kind used to sew the old man's mouth. She smiled, though her lips never moved, and in Matsuda's head came her voice. Soft and close. Greater than, he's quiet now. So I can speak. Chapter 11 The Unheard Scream. The rain had returned to Tsukikage, soft but ceaseless. Drops slid down the windows of the Kuroda house, without a sound. It was as though the world had forgotten how to remember noise. Matsuda stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the floorboards. Something beneath the wood seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat muffled by earth. Then he saw it, a crack in the floor, circular, hidden beneath a rotting rug. He pulled the rug away. Underneath was a wooden trapdoor, sealed with a rusted chain. On its surface, scratched by hand, were faint characters. Greater than, beneath silence. The voices wait. He hesitated only a moment before breaking the chain. The air that rushed out was cold and sour, carrying the smell of soil and decay. A narrow stairway led into the dark. With flashlight in one hand and recorder in the other, Matsuda descended. The light flickered with every step. The deeper he went, the thicker the air became, as if he were walking into the lungs of something vast. At the bottom was a wide chamber. Stone walls curved inward, slick with moisture. And standing in rows across the chamber were wooden statues, dozens of them. Human-shaped, life-sized. Each one had a face carved with exquisite detail, except for the mouth. Every mouth had been cut away. Some had cracked open from rot, revealing fragments of white bone beneath. Matsuda realized with horror that these weren't just carvings, they were tombs. He lifted the recorder and whispered, "Who are you?" No answer. But the light dimmed, as if the darkness itself inhaled. Then, one of the statues moved. Its head turned. The wooden neck creaked, but the sound existed only in Matsuda's mind. He raised the flashlight and froze. The statue's eyes were wet. Real. A fissure opened across its face where a mouth should have been. And from that impossible gap came a silent scream, a vibration that hit his skull like a wave. Matsuda staggered back, covering his ears, though there was no real sound. The scream existed only inside his head, violent, endless. More statues began to move. Their heads twisted, their eyeless faces cracking open. A flood of invisible noise crashed through the chamber, hundreds of voices layered on top of each other. Screaming, praying, begging. Greater than, silence is salvation. Do not speak. A tokodama is listening. Matsuda dropped the recorder and fell to his knees, his nose bleeding, his skull pulsing with the pressure of the unspoken noise. He clawed at his throat, but no sound escaped. Then, a whisper, soft and innocent. Greater than, you shouldn't have come down here. He looked up. Hana stood a few feet away, her small body illuminated by the trembling light. She held the same mouthless doll in her arms, its carved slit now wide enough to look like a smile. Greater than, Daddy stayed quiet. She said, Mommy did too. Now it's your turn. She lifted a finger to her lips. Everything stopped. The chamber froze in a vacuum of silence so deep it became physical, pressing against his chest. His lungs, his skull. Matsuda felt something tightening inside his throat. He touched his neck, and felt thread under the skin. Black thread, pulling, knotting, closing. He tried to scream, but the stitches sealed him shut from the inside. His eyes watered, blood ran down his chin. Around him, the statues began to split open. From each one crawled a mouthless figure, pale and twitching, reaching toward him. Hands cold as ash gripped his shoulders, his arms, his face. His flashlight flickered once, twice, then went out. In total darkness, the recorder clicked back on by itself. The red light glowed faintly on the floor. Through the static came a final whisper, his own voice, recorded moments earlier. Greater than, if anyone hears this, don't go down. The recorder whined. Then silence claimed everything. Chapter 12 The Ritual of Silence. Matsuda opened his eyes to darkness. He was lying on cold stone, deep beneath the Kuroda house. The air was heavy, filled with the stench of damp earth and burnt incense. The walls glistened like wet skin. When he tried to move, pain shot through his throat. The black threads were gone, but the wounds remained. He couldn't speak. He could only listen. And there it was again, the whisper. Not in the air, but inside his head, like a second heartbeat. Greater than, you've heard us now. So remember. The world blurred, and suddenly Matsuda was no longer in the chamber. He was standing in a wide clearing under a full moon, Tsukikage. Decades earlier. Around him, villagers knelt before a shrine, hundreds of candles flickering in the wind. A young girl was tied to the altar, her mouth covered with white cloth, her eyes wide, wet with terror. An old priest in black robes raised a wooden staff, chanting. The words were old, guttural, something between prayer and curse. Greater than, O spirits of the mountain, take this voice as offering. Let silence guard our homes. Let no sound awaken the darkness beneath. The girl struggled, muffled cries swallowed by the cloth. Then the priest struck the ground with his staff. The air itself seemed to split. A shadow rose from the earth, long, thin, like smoke with a face. Its mouth opened wide, and the night collapsed into quiet. The villagers bowed low. The girl's body went still. When the cloth fell away, her mouth was gone, smooth skin where lips should be. The priest turned, his face streaked with blood from his own ears. He whispered, his voice trembling. Greater than, it is done. The curse of sound is sealed. The village will live in silence. The vision broke like glass. Matsuda fell to his knees in the dark chamber once more, gasping without air. His mind reeled, he understood now. The people of Tsukikage had sacrificed a child's voice to seal an ancient curse. That child was Hana. The silence that protected them was built from her suffering. He stumbled toward the center of the room, where faint symbols glowed on the stone floor, the remnants of the ritual circle. The carvings pulsed with a dim, reddish light, and from beneath them came a sound he hadn't heard in days, breathing. A crack appeared in the floor. A hand, pale, slender, and impossibly long, reached out from the darkness. It was followed by a woman's figure, draped in tattered silk, her face half shrouded by hair. Where her mouth should have been was only a scar. But when she spoke, her voice filled Matsuda's head, echoing like thunder. Greater than, you've seen our sin. You know the price. The woman stepped closer, her shadow stretching over him like ink. Her eyes were endless pits, full of voices clawing to escape. Greater than, we were promised peace. They took my daughter's voice. Now I will take yours. Matsuda trembled, clutching the recorder to his chest. He pressed the record button, though he no longer had the strength to speak. Blood spilled down his neck. In his final act, he whispered, hoarse, cracked, barely human. Greater than, I choose, silence. The ground erupted with light. A blinding pulse filled the chamber, not sound, but its opposite, an explosion of emptiness. The woman's scream, unheard, tore through the earth. The walls shook, the statues shattered, and the mountain itself groaned. Then everything fell still. When the light faded, Matsuda was gone. Only the recorder remained, lying among the rubble, its red light still blinking. The last sound it captured was a whisper, barely audible, childlike and soft. Greater than, thank you, for letting me sleep. Chapter 13 The Girl in the Tape. 3 days after the landslide that buried Tsukikage Village, a rescue team from Iwate Prefecture arrived to search for survivors. What they found was only silence. Not a bird, not the wind, not even the hum of their own equipment. Among the debris of a collapsed house, one of the rescuers discovered an old tape recorder. half melted by fire but still blinking red. It was recording. The device was sent to an audio lab in Tokyo for analysis. Technicians cleaned the reels, patched the burned segments, and played the file labeled record_002.wave. For the first 40 seconds, there was only static. Then, a man's voice, weak and trembling. Greater than, "This is Matsuda Hiroshi. If you hear this, it means I didn't leave. The ritual, it's real." They gave their voices to keep it alive. I tried to end it. The voice cut off. 2 minutes of silence followed. Then, suddenly, a child's voice. Clear, gentle. Greater than, "Can you hear me now, Mr. Matsuda?" The technicians froze. The tone was natural, perfectly balanced, not distortion, not interference. Greater than, "I'm here, in your machine. You brought me back." The head technician frowned, checking the waveform. The signal was steady, but something was wrong. The room's sound meters, even the ones not connected to the tape, began to spike and fall in rhythm with the voice. Greater than, "You don't need to be afraid," the little girl said. "It's quiet here, you can stay." The sound engineers exchanged uneasy glances. They played the segment again, slowed to half speed. At the end of the sentence, hidden beneath the words, was a faint echo, another voice overlapping Hannah's. It wasn't a child. It was Matsuda's. Greater than, "She's still listening." The recording warped. A piercing shriek erupted from the speakers, then cut to dead air. All the monitors shut off at once. The tape reel continued spinning, though the device was no longer plugged in. When the lights came back, the tape's surface had turned black. Its label, once smudged with ash, now bore clear handwriting, childish, uneven. Greater than, "Thank you for hearing me." The technicians, shaken, boxed the recorder and filed an incident report. But that night, the lead engineer took it home, driven by curiosity. At 2:13 a.m., his neighbors reported seeing a red light glowing in his apartment window, pulsing in steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. By morning, he was gone. On his desk, investigators found the tape recorder, still warm. The reel was empty. Only the label remained, now changed again. Greater than, record_003.wave, duration, 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. No data, no sound. Just silence. When the file was played on a different device, nothing happened for the first 46 seconds. Then, a whisper, soft as breathing. Greater than, "If you can hear me, you're already here." And then, nothing. Every audio device in the lab failed at the same time. No one could ever recover the tape again. Those who heard it said that for several minutes afterward, they could no longer hear their own heartbeat. Not because it stopped, but because the world had forgotten how to make the sound. Chapter 14: The House That Breathes. A week after the mysterious failure at the Tokyo lab, a government investigation team was sent to what remained of Tsukikage. They were equipped with seismic sensors, thermal scanners, and environmental monitors. Their goal? To determine why the ground in the area continued to move, even though the village was officially buried. When the team arrived, they found something that shouldn't have been there. The Kuroda house, fully intact. It stood alone in the center of the valley, half sunken in ash, surrounded by the silent remains of trees turned white by fire. No one could explain it. It was as if the house had rebuilt itself. Lead engineer Shimizu turned on his recording equipment. Static. He adjusted the settings, and the noise changed rhythmically, pulsing like a heartbeat. Greater than, strange, he murmured. It's picking up low-frequency vibration, like something breathing. A younger investigator laughed nervously. There's no wind, he said, so what's moving? The sensors spiked. Inside the house, the temperature dropped to near freezing. Dust floated in slow motion through the air. When they stepped across the threshold, the door closed behind them on its own. At first, all seemed still. But as they advanced through the living room, one of them placed a hand on the wall and jerked away. Greater than, it's warm, he whispered. It's moving. The walls were soft beneath the plaster, subtly expanding and contracting, as though the house itself were inhaling. Every breath drew in cold air and exhaled faint mist. A low hum began to vibrate through the floor. The microphones caught it, though none of the team could hear it. On the waveform display, the hum formed a clear pattern, the rhythm of human breathing. The team leader ordered everyone to leave. But before they could, the sound recorders began to glitch. The signal twisted into something that almost formed words. Greater than, don't wake her. Lights flickered. One of the thermal cameras showed figures inside the walls, dozens of them. Blurry shapes moving like shadows underwater. Then the floor heaved. Plaster split apart, revealing veins of black beneath the boards. A burst of air erupted from below, carrying the smell of old blood. Greater than, it's alive, someone shouted. The ceiling bulged. From every surface came that awful rhythm, inhale, exhale, faster and faster, until the whole structure pulsed like a lung. One investigator dropped his camera. Through the shaking frame, they saw handprints spreading across the walls, hundreds, maybe thousands, pressing from the inside out. Then, from deep within the house, a sound escaped. A single, faint breath. Every device overloaded. The footage burned white. When the static cleared, the house was gone. In its place was only black soil, steaming slightly, as if something enormous had exhaled for the last time. Among the debris, the team found one thing, a melted cassette tape, still smoking. Its label read, "Greater than, the house that breathes, final record." When the tape was later tested in a soundproof lab, the playback yielded only 13 seconds of audio. For the first 12 seconds, silence. In the 13th, a child's voice whispered, "Greater than, if they burn the house, it will breathe with the smoke." 2 days later, a wildfire consumed the valley. The flames spread unnaturally fast, devouring everything in their path. Witnesses claimed they saw the fire rise high into the sky, but no crackling. No roaring, not a single sound. Just flames moving in silence. When the ashes settled, a survivor swore they saw a faint outline in the smoke. The face of a little girl, smiling. And as the wind carried the ashes away, the rescuer said he heard something impossible. The world itself breathing. Chapter 15: The Return of Silence. 1 month after the fire that erased Tsukikage from every map, Japan awoke to something strange. It began on a quiet evening, during the broadcast of a national television program titled, "The Village Without Sound, The Mystery of Tsukikage." The anchor's voice echoed normally for 12 minutes. Then, without warning, the sound vanished. The images continued, the host gesturing, lips moving, reporters standing among blackened ruins, but not a single word could be heard. Every other channel went silent too. Phones, radios, internet streams. Even the hum of electricity disappeared. For 60 seconds, the entire nation fell into absolute stillness. Then, the screen flickered. A new image appeared, a little girl sitting amid ashes, holding a mouthless doll. She looked straight into the camera, eyes dark and endless. Subtitles appeared beneath her. "Greater than, thank you for hearing us." The broadcast ended. In the days that followed, strange things began happening across the country. People reported sounds vanishing at random, footsteps that made no noise. Trains gliding without a hum, wind moving through trees with no rustle. Children whispered of dreams where a soft voice told them, "Greater than, shush, be quiet, listen carefully." Scientists detected dead zones of acoustic energy, pockets where microphones and recording devices failed completely. They called the phenomenon the Tsukikage Silence Zone. But locals had another name, the house in the air. 1 week later, a group of university students ventured into the burned remains of the valley to shoot a documentary. Their last recovered footage showed the fog parting to reveal an empty clearing. No trees, no ruins. Then, something appeared, a faint outline of a house, made entirely of ash and smoke, pulsing softly as though breathing. The camera shook. Wind whipped through the valley, yet no sound came. A low vibration filled the frame, the image bending like ripples in water. A whisper emerged, not through the microphone, but from within the footage itself. Greater than, "You can hear us now, can't you?" The tape ended in black. All 5 students disappeared. Their equipment was found days later, melted and silent. That same night, the national news attempted to broadcast a live update about the missing students. The anchor, pale, trembling, tried to speak, but her lips produced no sound. For a long moment, she stared directly into the camera. Then she smiled faintly, as if listening to something only she could hear. The screen went dark. After that, the silence spread. Tokyo's traffic grew soundless. Seaside towns reported waves that moved but never crashed. Across the country, people said they could feel breathing beneath the ground, slow, deep, and steady. For 24 hours, no sound existed anywhere in Japan. Not a voice, not an echo, not even the wind. Those who survived said they heard one thing in that eternal stillness. A whisper, gentle and close. Greater than, "Thank you for listening." Drop of Blood epilogue, the silent recording. A year later, technicians at a closed broadcast station discovered a forgotten video file hidden deep within the archives. No timestamp, no metadata. Just a black screen and faint static. Then, an image appeared. Matsuda Hiroshi, standing before the Kuroda house. Face pale, eyes hollow. He looked straight into the camera and spoke in a calm, weary voice. Greater than, silence is also a voice. But when silence begins to listen back, run. The screen flickered. A soft breath escaped the speakers. Then, nothing. The file erased itself. In the end, Tsukikage vanished beneath ash and time. No house, no survivors, no proof that it ever existed. Only silence, wide and endless, stretching across the valleys of Iwate like a second sky. But silence never dies. It waits, it listens. And every time a voice falters in the dark, every time a sound stops for just a heartbeat too long, something in the quiet remembers you. Because the curse of Tsukikage was never about losing sound. It was about what waits after it's gone.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.